Hello there, and welcome to Dream Myths. The sun drifted low across the horizon, its last light scattering over the water like liquid fire. The boat rocked gently in the swell, each rise and fall a quiet reminder of the vastness beneath. Divers moved with calm precision, fastening belts of weight, adjusting regulators, and checking the glowing screens of their computers. There was a ritual to it, a rhythm that brought steadiness to the mind, as if every buckle secured and every gauge confirmed was a small act of trust placed in the ocean itself. Around the hull, tiny sparks flickered in the gathering dusk. Bioluminescent plankton shimmered with each movement of the tide, painting brief constellations upon the waves. It was as though the sea was offering a prelude, a whispered promise of the wonders hidden below. Above, the sky deepened into a vast curtain of violet and amber, slowly drawing closed as night prepared to claim the stage. The air held a stillness, broken only by the solitary cry of a seabird. It wheeled once, then vanished into the fading glow of the horizon. Its call lingered for a moment, sharp and haunting, like a signal that the story of the deep was ready to begin. The dive master gave a final nod, his hand signals crisp and assured, then tipped backward into the sea. One by one the divers followed, surrendering themselves to the water's embrace. The entry was sudden, chaotic for a heartbeat bubbles rushing past, the world turning sideways until the body adjusted and the descent began in earnest. Sunlight poured down through the surface in luminous columns, shafts of gold piercing the blue, stretching deeper and thinner with every meter. Suspended between water and light, the body no longer belonged to gravity. The sensation of weightlessness took hold, limbs moving with the ease of thought alone, as though the diver had stepped beyond the limits of land into another element entirely. Breath escaped in steady rhythms, each exhalation scattering pearls of silver that spun upward, transforming into drifting constellations. They rose and rose, tiny stars fleeing toward the world above, while below stretched an unfathomable expanse of darkness. In that first brush with the twilight beneath, a thought flickered unbidden, a quiet tremor of doubt. What lay waiting in those unseen depths? What stories had never been told, guarded by the silence of 1,000 years? From the dim blue ahead, a flicker of motion gathered into form. A vast school of jackfish wheeled as one, their bodies flashing silver with every turn, the arcs of their movements spiraling into patterns so precise it seemed less like instinct and more like choreography. The swirls caught the eye until they no longer resembled fish at all, but gateways spinning thresholds that hinted at other worlds concealed within the ocean's depth. Tuna darted along the edges of the spectacle, their muscles coiled like drawn arrows, breaking the symmetry with sudden bursts of speed. Then, from the haze, a manta ray emerged, its wings sweeping in slow, majestic rhythm. Each pass was a gesture of grace writ large, its vast shadow casting the impression of something ancient, a creature older than memory itself. Just as awe began to settle into silence, the water vibrated with a series of sharp clicks. A pod of dolphins materialized, weaving effortlessly between divers, their sleek forms lit by the fractured sunlight. The sound pulsed through the water like coded messages, a cadence too deliberate to be random. To hear, it was to confront an unsettling question. Were these voices merely navigating, or were they telling a story one meant for ears that have never truly understood? The descent carried the divers alongside a sheer wall of limestone, an ancient reef that rose like the ramparts of a drowned city. Every ledge and crevice teemed with life, as though the stone itself had become a canvas for nature's patient hand. A green sea turtle glided past with solemn dignity, barnacles etched into its shell like the marks of time. Nearby, a giant clam yawned open, its mantle shimmering with hues of violet, emerald, and gold, an opulence that rivaled stained glass windows in a cathedral. When the beam of a torch swept across the reef, the corals responded with brilliance. Towers of branching structures and fans of delicate lace seemed to glow from within, as if the very architecture of the ocean was singing in color. Each cavity held its own tale, tiny fish darting like quicksilver messengers, sponges filtering the unseen currents, and shadows hinting at predators waiting for the right moment. It was a chronicle of evolution, written not in ink, but in living flesh. From one hollow, a moray eel protruded, jaws working rhythmically in silent warning. Yet beside its tooth-lined mouth, a troop of shrimp busied themselves, plucking parasites from its skin with fearless precision. For an instant, violence and peace existed side by side, the eel tolerating their touch, the shrimp offering service, both bound by an unspoken truce. In that fleeting harmony, the ocean revealed a paradox, that even within its most perilous corners, there could be moments of unexpected grace. Deeper still, the water cooled, and the colors of the surface gave way to twilight. out of the dim expanse, shapes began to materialize. Lanternfish rising in countless numbers, their bellies glowing with emerald light. They moved in shimmering unison, forming a living river that streamed upward toward the surface. It was a migration older than history itself, a nightly pilgrimage written into their very blood, as if the ocean had composed its own eternal hymn. Among them drifted firefly squid, their bodies pulsing with intricate displays of blue and white. The patterns rippled along their skin like coded messages, each sequence too precise to be random. Together, they transformed the abyss into a moving constellation, a galaxy untethered from the sky and set adrift in the sea. Suspended in the middle of it all, the diver felt suddenly diminished, like a lone wanderer adrift between stars. The immensity of the spectacle erased every sense of scale until the boundary between self and sea began to dissolve. For an instant, a single squid drew near, its lights racing from head to tail in a cascade of brilliance. The glow lingered as though it carried a message, something whispered across ages, a fragment of the past delivered quietly into the present. Here, where the light of the sun could never reach, darkness was no longer the absence of brightness, but a presence unto itself. It pressed against the body like a living thing, dense and unyielding, as though the abyss had weight and intent. Out of this suffocating void emerged the anglerfish, its form grotesque yet strangely refined by necessity. A lantern of pale fire swayed from its brow, drawing curious prey toward jaws lined with translucent daggers. For a heartbeat, the teeth caught the faint glow, flashing like a cruel constellation, and then vanished once more into blackness. The impression lingered. If one predator had revealed itself, how many others remained unseen, watching from the folds of the abyss? Nearby, creatures of glass drifted fish, so transparent their organs floated like faint apparitions inside fragile bodies. They seemed less like animals and more like phantoms, fleeting shapes carved out of nothingness. Then came the vampire squid, trailing filaments like strands of shadow spun into silk. With a slow unfurling, it wrapped itself in its own cloak, releasing a cloud of glowing mucus that shimmered eerily before dissolving into the void. Around the vents of the sea floor, vast colonies of tube worms rose like crimson banners, thriving on the heat of the earth itself, where the rest of the ocean knew only hunger and cold. These beings had built entire kingdoms upon fire and poison. Every encounter was a contradiction. Monstrous yet fragile, alien yet precise, these creatures were not mistakes of evolution, but its masterpieces, living paradoxes shaped to survive at the edge of the imaginable world. From the depths rose a presence so immense, it seemed to reshape the very scale of the sea. A female sperm whale, her form stretching more than 15 meters from scarred head to fluked tail. She moved with the authority of centuries, her body carved by battles with giant squid, each mark etched into her skin like lines of a living chronicle. A sharp burst of clicks rolled outward from her skull, echoing through the water with a force that was felt as much as heard. These were not mere sounds, but pulses of sonar waves that painted the ocean in 3 dimensions, mapping every contour of the unseen. To the untrained ear, they resembled percussion, the steady beat of some primordial drum, announcing her dominion over the depths. Close at her side swam a calf, smaller and uncertain, clinging to the safety of its mother's slipstream. Its answering clicks were tentative, high-pitched and uneven, a language still learning its words. Yet the mother responded with patience, her sonar folding around the calf like a shield, guiding it through the cathedral of the abyss. In that exchange, the water became an amphitheater of sound. Each pulse, each echo was both communication and inheritance. The passing down of knowledge older than human memory. The dialogue was not only between 2 whales, but between generations, the assurance that the rhythm of life, carried through blood and sound, would endure. It was a reminder written not in books, but in vibrations that resonated across leagues of water, the timeless bond of mother and child, spoken in a tongue the ocean itself could understand. Then, from the vast silence, the ocean unveiled its greatest secret. A shadow emerged, immense and otherworldly, lifting slowly from the blue. The body of a blue whale broke the surface in a sweep of power, its skin mottled with the gray of stone and the shimmer of sapphire light. For a moment, it seemed less like an animal and more like a celestial body, a planet rising from the abyss, carrying the weight of an ancient world upon its back. Its dimensions defied comprehension. 30 meters from head to tail, each fluke wider than the span of a house. A tongue heavier than an elephant. A heart as large as an automobile, driving blood through a labyrinth of veins that stretched for miles inside its frame. Every beat reverberated like the strike of a cosmic drum, pulsing through the water with a rhythm older than humankind. The giant opened its cavernous jaws, pleated throat expanding to engulf tens of tons of water. Baleen plates, long as piano keys and edged like bristles, filtered the surge with delicate precision, leaving only the drifting krill upon which this titan fed. That paradox, an animal greater than any other, sustained by prey no larger than a fingernail, was nature's quiet reminder that enormity rests upon the smallest of things. To witness such a creature was to confront humility itself. Each rise for breath sent a geyser soaring skyward, a column of vapor that caught the sunlight like a beacon. And in those moments, as its massive chest heaved and its heart thundered in the unseen depths, the truth became undeniable. Besides such a being, humanity was little more than a fleeting whisper carried on the tide. Across the open sea, the great whale pressed onward, tracing a path older than nations. 12,000 miles of migration lay before it, a journey from the icy poles to the warmth of the tropics, guided not by compass or star, but by the Earth's invisible fields and the memory of generations past. Through these months of travel, the Leviathan endured long stretches of hunger, its vast body thinning as reserves of fat burned away. Yet the instinct to persist was stronger than want, for at the end of this odyssey waited the promise of nourishment and renewal. When at last the krill appeared, the ocean itself seemed to ignite. Billions of tiny crustaceans gathered in dense swarms, glowing crimson in the light that filtered from above. The sea turned to a living tapestry of fire, clouds of scarlet shifting and folding as though the water itself had been dyed in blood. The whale surged forward with monumental force. Its jaws opened wide, pleats unfurling like the bellows of a cathedral organ, and the sea erupted around it. A single lunge consumed 70 tons of water and prey, the force of the strike sending a shock wave that boomed through the depths like thunder echoing inside the bones of the earth. Then came the stillness. The surface, once torn into chaos, grew calm again. The only trace of the storm a trail of bubbles drifting up. In that pause, the spectacle seemed unreal, as though the ocean had momentarily revealed its fury, only to fold it back into silence. It was the quiet after the tempest, the breathless interval when power gives way to peace, and the immensity of what has passed begins to settle upon the mind. From the silence of the deep, a sound unfurled low, resonant, and almost beyond the grasp of human hearing. It was the song of the blue whale, a hymn carried on frequencies so deep they passed not through the ears but through the bones, reverberating in the chest like the echo of an ancient drum. Each phrase lingered, stretching across minutes, its power not only in the notes themselves, but in the spaces between them. The pauses became part of the music, silences so profound they pressed upon the mind, reminding the listener that absence can speak as loudly as sound. This voice was more than song. It was architecture. It bridged oceans, traveling for hundreds of miles through salt and current, a thread binding distant waters into a single tapestry. To other whales, it was both beacon and map, a guide to migration and a summons to companionship. To the sea itself, it was a ritual of renewal, for with each breath and each feeding, the giants turned krill into fertilizer, seeding plankton blooms that nourished the chain of life. They were not merely creatures, but engineers of ecosystems, shaping the rhythm of the ocean with every passage. And yet, beneath the wonder, the question lingered like an undertow. For whom did they sing? Were the notes a message to their kin, a call across leagues of emptiness? Were they echoes meant only for themselves? An affirmation of existence in a wilderness too vast to comprehend? Or, perhaps most haunting of all, were they a voice addressed to us fragile newcomers to this planet's stage, reminding humanity that the greatest stories of the earth are still being spoken, if only we learn how to listen? In the vast canvas of night, the ocean still carried the whale's voice, a sonorous hymn echoing across unseen leagues. Yet threaded through its depth came another sound, the metallic groan of ships, the relentless churn of engines. Two worlds overlapped, one ancient and primal, the other forged of steel and speed. The harmony of nature and the discord of industry collided in the same waters. A reminder that survival itself had become a negotiation. Their union was celebrated with joy throughout the kingdom. A castle of noble stone was granted to them, with fertile lands stretching wide, where Jack and his bride would dwell in peace. Children were born to them. Laughter filled the halls, and for the first time the slayer of giants laid aside his sword, content to rest in the comfort of hearth and home. But on the night of their wedding, as silence settled over the castle, Jack heard once more the faint tolling of that unseen bell which had haunted his journey. Its note was softer now, distant as though carried by the wind. Not a summons, but a farewell. To Jack it seemed the voice of fate itself, marking the close of his long trial. The people praised him as a savior, raising his name into legend. Shrines and songs kept his memory alive, and mothers told their children of the youth who had conquered both monsters and sorcery. Yet in the corners of the feasting halls, the elders whispered a darker truth. When light triumphs too greatly, shadows stir anew. For balance will always seek its way, and so the tale of Jack reached its end, yet not without a lingering echo. For even as he lived out his days in contentment, the question remained, was his struggle truly finished? Or had he merely won a respite in a war without end? The story closes, but the silence it leaves behind asks what no voice can answer, whether the battle between human wit and the darkness of the world is ever truly done.